So Fallout 3 is a game set in post-apocalyptic Washington D.C. And it's really a big sandbox game, a game where you're allowed to create whatever kind of character you want and play the game however you want. You can go off on your own and just explore around and do whatever you want. Combat, you can use speech and talk to people. You can use stealth and try and be sneaky, or use science skills to hack. You can be good, evil, neutral, somewhere in between, and play the game, on a quest by quest or on a minute by minute basis, however you feel like playing.
It's a very large free-roaming game. How many hours do you think you can spend on the game?
There's probably about maybe 20, 25 hours for the main quest, and then around 100 hours for everything that you can do in the game. And it is a game that's designed to be replayed, so you can play the game through once and try quests a certain way and see how things turn out, and play the game again as a completely different type of character and get a different experience.
Yeah, there was some talk about the many endings in Fallout 3. I thought the latest number was 500. How do you make all those endings? Are they very different or just a little different?
The ending is really very similar to the way it worked in the previous Fallout games, where you get an ending that is the story of your game told back to you, and at key points through the game, you're gonna make certain choices, and we keep track of those choices that you make. So at the end of the game, we tell it back to you. And so the 500 different endings is really just all of the different possible variations and combinations of all of the things we track that you might have done. It really is to make sure that the ending that you get is very much tailored to you and what you did in the game, as opposed to giving you a generic ending that may or may not have anything to do with how you played the game. We want it to be customized to your experience.
Alright, so it's the third piece in the franchise. Does it continue from the first two games, or is it a totally new, different new experience?
Right. It's a completely new. It follows the overall story of Fallout in terms of the canon and what's going on in the world and all of that. But it's a separate storyline from Fallout 1 and 2. It's set on the East Coast in DC, whereas the previous two were on the West Coast. And there are things from Fallout 3 that you'll recognize from 1 and 2. There's some references to a few things. You can have a dog again in the game called dog meat, like you could in the original. So there are things that are pulled directly from the original games, but the story stands on its own.
Alright, well, you can't tell many things about the story, but it's a post-apocalyptic setting from a huge war. Can you tell us a bit about that war, how that came, how it started?
So, I mean, the world of Fallout is a different timeline from the one that we know that takes place somewhere after World War II. It splits off from our own, and it progresses along this line that how they viewed the world was going to develop. That everybody would have a rocket car, and they would have robots for maids, and technology would advance at a much more rapid state than it did. But it would all be kind of future retro, so it'd be like big clunky devices that were really cool. So it's as if that world is the one that happened, and then it gets blown up in a nuclear war. So you still have that 1950s sensibility and that optimism, and people go to escape to these underground vaults, and that's where you emerge from. You emerge from a vault where you've lived your whole life. You grow up in the vault. The start of the game is you being born and then flashing through different periods of your life where you're learning how to play the game and creating your character. And then when you wake up and you're 19, your only parent, your dad, has left the vault. And so the main quest has to do with you emerging into this world, and where did my dad go, and what's so important that he would leave me behind in the vault. And so that's the setting for you coming out into this world where you've only known life in this vault, and now you're in this really sort of hellish wasteland.
Well, you talked about 1950s setting. This other game, BioShock, came out some time ago, and many people see reference in Fallout 3 from that game to the setting and the style. Did you take any inspiration from BioShock, or you think it's the other way around?
It's probably the other way around, because we were fairly far along in development before we ever saw BioShock. I think probably there's some things in BioShock that actually drew inspiration from the first Fallout. So I think if there's similarities between Fallout 3 and BioShock, some of that may come from there, where there was some certain things from the originals that may either appear or be an inspiration for stuff in BioShock. But our inspiration is obviously the original Fallout games. That's what we're trying to follow and make, and so certainly there can be some similarities there where we're also, both games are drawing inspiration from the same stuff.
There will be a lot of shooting and action in the game, although it's an RPG. You got two different kinds of, how you can attack, two different gameplay types. Can you tell us a bit more about those?
Sure. So, you can play the game in real time, just like you would any standard action or shooter where you're playing the game real time, but then you have the ability to press a button and go into a pause mode where you're able to stop time and you're able to target different enemies, different body parts on enemies, and queue up attacks on different body parts and enemies. And then once you're done, you press a button and it plays it all back in this cinematic style using these different camera angles. So you're able to balance the two. How much do you want to play in real time? How do you want to use this pause mode called VATS, and really balancing the two modes? And I think they both work well together.
Alright, well, in other Bethesda RPG, Oblivion, the difficulty setting of the monsters was adapted to the user level of the player. Will this be the same in Fallout 3?
No, it's handled pretty differently in Fallout, where when you start the game, you'll find parts of the world that'll be much easier for you to handle and much more difficult for you to handle. And if you go into an area where the creatures are too tough for you and you leave and come back a couple of levels later, that they'll be the same creatures that were there before. They don't change while you've leveled up and suddenly become some other much tougher creatures. So we're much more careful about how we handle that and making sure that everything in the world isn't becoming dramatically tougher as the player becomes more higher and higher level.
Well, there has been much comparison to Oblivion, of course. It uses the same engine, but how did you improve it graphically?
It is based off of the Oblivion engine. We've obviously added an awful lot to it because Fallout is a very different type of game. But we're probably running maybe twice as much detail on the screen as we were in Oblivion, and it's at a faster frame rate, and our loads are faster. So, we've definitely done a lot to it to optimize it and make it a better engine. We didn't just sort of take it and say, okay, well, that's good enough, let's use it. We spent a ton of time making it look better, run faster. I think that shows in the level of detail that we've got, the draw distances that that we do. All of that stuff is a result of spending a couple extra years working on this engine and making it better.
Fallout is set in the future, so what kind of weapons can we expect in this game?
There's over 50 different kinds of weapons in the game, and they run the spectrum of a lot of different types of guns, broken up into small guns, big guns. We have energy weapons. There are melee weapons, unarmed weapons. So there's a wide mix across all of those, so that you'll have pistols and laser rifles and the Fat Man that we showed off, the big nuclear bomb catapult. You can whack guys with a baseball bat or a pool cue. The Power Fist is back, one of the popular weapons from the original Fallout. So there's a nice mix of all different types depending on how you want to play the game.
Well, what's your favorite weapon?
My favorite weapon is probably either the Fat Man or the rocket launcher, which is this big gun that you can actually create. You can create a custom weapon in the game, and you can, once you build a rocket launcher, whatever junk you find in the world, you can shove into this thing and use it ammo and shoot it at people. So if you find like a bunch of teddy bears and ashtrays, you can shove it into this thing and start shooting them at people as you run around the world. It's pretty cool.
Well, with this big weapons, nukes and everything, can we destroy environments, or isn't it really that interactive?
So vehicles, if a vehicle has an engine still left in it, then it can explode. So you'll find cars spread around the world, or buses that have the ability to explode if you shoot them, throw grenades at them or whatever. But the buildings themselves aren't, and the terrain isn't destructible. You're not going to collapse buildings or anything like that.
Well, you talked about the karma system. That's how you interact with your NPCs. How will the karma affect the gameplay?
Karma is really more almost of a barometer for how you're playing the game. The level to which you're being good or neutral or evil in dealing with people. It's not now your karma is this, so none of these people will talk to you, or all of these people will talk to you. It's more meant to be a way to provide feedback to the player on just how good or bad or neutral you're being in the game, and the response from people should be in those individual instances where you're being good or bad or neutral, and how quests are resolving themselves, or how people are reacting to the way that you behave in the world, as opposed to suddenly locking off or opening up whole parts of the game.
Right, so when people like you, when you're attacked by a creature, will they help you? Will they just stand by How will that interaction work?
Right. So if you're out in the wasteland and you're getting attacked by creatures and you run towards some other NPCs, provided they're friendly towards you, they'll start attacking whatever creatures that you'll be exploring the wasteland and come across NPCs fighting with creatures or creatures fighting with other creatures. So you can almost provide a distraction by getting one creature near another one and seeing if they'll attack each other and leave you alone. Robots are the same way. You'll see creatures out in the world attacking robots. So everybody in the world sort of acts on their own, and you can get in situations where you can get help from folks in dealing in combat.
Alright, well the world in Fallout is very big. It's like, I thought I had 50 square kilometers. We've seen a lot of wasteland. Can we expect any other settings and very different kinds of environments?
Well, first of all, the space, I really have no idea how big Fallout is. It's probably a bit smaller than Oblivion. It's definitely a bit smaller than Oblivion, but the difference is you have to walk everywhere on foot to get there first. There's no rideable mounts, there's no cars or drivable vehicles, so everywhere you go you have to explore on foot, so it takes a bit longer to explore the world than it did in Oblivion. But the downtown DC area is very different. It's very much of an urban environment, lots of buildings and destruction down there, as opposed to the wasteland where it tends to be, spots of stuff here and there, but more barren. DC is very compact and concentrated and very dense with stuff. So it definitely feels very different when you go down into DC versus out in the wasteland.
Alright, so you said we have no vehicles and you need to walk everywhere. Is the quick Oblivion, you had this setting you could just jump over to another town. Has that been stripped from the game?
No, we still have a fast travel system. So once you've been to a location, once you've discovered it and explored it, then you can fast travel back and forth between locations that you know about at any point in the game. But the difference is that in Oblivion, you already knew about a bunch of locations when you started the game, so you could jump to all of these different towns spread around the map and use those as points to go out and explore. In Fallout, you don't. You leave this vault having never been outside before, and so you have to walk to all of the locations first to discover them, and then once you discover them, you can fast travel back and forth between them.
Alright, well, I heard something about the user level cap. In Oblivion, it was very high, like level 50, and it is lower in Fallout. So how will the user upgrading work, and how will you get stronger?
In Fallout, the level cap is level 20. It is an experience points based game, so it works very differently than Oblivion, where you leveled up by using different skills. In Fallout, it's based on getting experience for killing creatures, finishing quests, discovering locations, things like that. And when you level up, you get to spend points on skills and improving your skills, and you get to pick a perk. So you get 19 times that you get to level up and bump up your skills and pick different perks. And the level cap is really just, sort of us playing the game and deciding that, at a certain point the player is become about as powerful as they can be and have the game be at all fun. And so we felt like putting a cap on there was just a logical step for gameplay balance purposes. So you can change every time you level up. You can decide to put your skill points in, and if you get to level 20, trust me, by the time you get to that point, you've played the game for a long time, and you're going to have very high levels in a couple of different skills. So you can play the game and for 5 or 6 levels put all your points into lockpicking and small guns, and then suddenly decide, what, I really like science. I want to start putting my points into science, and within a couple of levels, you can get your science skill up by a pretty significant amount by this, putting all your skill points into it, and by the perks that you pick. And perks can additionally bump up different skills depending on which ones you pick. So you could get your science skill up pretty high pretty quickly if you decide to make a change.
Alright, and how do you like to play the game? Are you a stealthy guy or just shooting around?
I always play a little bit of everything. So, when I played Oblivion, I was sort of part magic, part fighter, part stealth guy, and I kind of do the same in Fallout. I use my repair skill a lot because I like being able to repair my own weapons and armor out in the world. I tend to gravitate towards small guns. I do use stealth quite a bit, actually. I really like getting that sneak attack bonus. So I kind of tend to use a mix of stuff, and I try and do as much as I can to bump my strength up, because I always find out I'm running out of space in my inventory, so I'm always wanting more strength to be able to carry more stuff in my inventory.
And what's your favorite thing really about the game, the reason to pick it up every time and to just keep it playing?
I mean, the fun part for me still, and I hope it's what everybody else finds when they get a chance to play the game, is just that, every time you pick it up, it can be a completely different experience. That based on kind of what you're in the mood for doing. That sometimes I pick it up and I just go run around for an hour out in the wasteland and fight some creatures or go find a dungeon type location and clear it out and see if I can find loot. And other times, I stick entirely to doing quests and exploring how I can solve different quests. Through dialogue or using stealth, trying to get through an area without firing a shot and see if I can sneak all the way through and get whatever I need to get and get back out. So I just, I like the variety and being able to change up how I play at any given moment.
People who live and love in our hometown, those dear hearts and gentle people.
The official release date is still fall 2008. We will be announcing our official date within the coming weeks, but for now it's still fall 2008, and hope to have it to everybody very soon.
I don't
War never changes.